Hello one and all, this is Jeff Stockton here. I'm just going to do a little quick lesson about playing on changes. In specific, we're going to look at giant steps today because it's one of the tougher ones, and if you can get through playing on this, then you're prepared to tackle any tune. You've got a good system at hand to tackle any tune and playing over it. So the changes to giant steps. Now, if I start talking about this and it's gibberish to you, then I suggest looking into diatonic harmony. Learn about diatonic harmony and also make sure you understand how that applies to all 12 keys. And if you need help in what to look into on that, look at the cycle of fifths. And other than that, I'm just going to get started, and if you have questions, just leave them in the comments section, and I'll do my best to help you out. So, we've got a 1 in the key of B, to a 5 to a 1 in the key of G, followed by a 5 and a 1 to the key of E flat. That's the first phrase. Now bear in mind that these three keys are all 2 whole steps down from one another. G is 2 whole steps down from the key of B, and then E flat would be 2 whole steps down from the key of G, and then B would be 2 whole steps down from the key of E flat. So this is a cycle of keys that are 2 whole steps apart each. That's a major third apart each, or a minor sixth apart each, depending on which direction you're going. So phrase 1, 1 in the key of B, 5-1 in the key of G, 5-1 in the key of E flat, and then a 2-5-1 to the key of G, followed by a 5-1 to the key of E flat, followed by a 5-1 to the key of B. And that's kind of the end of the first half of the tune. And that first half is the really tough part. The rest of it's modulating through these 3 keys, just not as rapidly. So, I'll play that with like a bass line underneath it. Whoops. Let me do that again. This is the second half. And that's where it would start over. So the second half, we just have a 2-5-1 in the key of E flat, 2-5-1 in the key of G, 2-5-1 in the key of B, 2-5-1 in the key of E flat, back to a 2-5-1 in the key of B. That's the starting over point of the progression. So that's the whole progression to giant steps. It's 16 bars long, and we're working with 3 keys that are equal distances apart from each other, major thirds apart from each other. That creates a perfect triangle on the cycle of fifths. So bear that in mind. Each of these keys have 3 notes in common with one another, 4 notes in contrast with one another. So that's a lot of changing. When these keys change, they change. And you have to really be on top of where those keys are located, or where the positions for those keys are located, next to one another on the guitar. So we're going to just use the 7th fret area of the guitar as an example here. So for the key of B, I've got what I'm going to call the root position because it's centered around the root note. So that's the 7th fret in the middle there, 6th fret and 9th fret on either side. And this is just one of your 5 box positions for the major scale. So if you ask me on the comments about that, I'm probably not going to answer you because those you can find anywhere. 5 major scale positions. Just search that and you'll find the right positions. So that's the position that's based around the root note. Now when I'm in the key of G, now I've got this shape that kind of starts on the 3rd of the key. So that one's kind of located, instead of between the 6th and 9th frets like the key of B was, that was just using, this one's more between the 7th and 10th frets. Whoops. Started to do the key of C there by accident. And then the key of E flat, we're going to move one more fret up for that. These keys, they naturally the positions want to slide up or down a fret at a time. So now I'm between the 8th and 11th frets mostly. I'm going to have a note on the 7th fret. And this is the shape that I have for the E flat scale. So now my pinky's on the root note, on the high E string and the low E string. Or my first finger on the 3rd string at the 8th fret. So that's the E flat scale that I'm going to use. The position for the E flat major scale that I'm going to use. So I've got the key of B, and then I've got the key of G, and then I've got the key of E flat. And I've got them all very closely related to one another. And with the key of E flat, while I'm there, I may shift down a position and use this position where my first finger would be on the 3rd of E flat. Oh, wait a second. Sorry. No. E flat, so that would be where my middle finger is on the 5th of the scale on the low E string. I could use that position instead of this position up here. And I can connect those two because they're right next to each other positionally. So that way I can get back into that 6th fret, 9th fret area when I'm getting back to the key of G. So here's the approach. You want to basically record the progression very slowly, maybe even as a slow waltz. And so on. Play through the whole progression at that kind of speed. And then start off by trying to make sure you have the chart in front of you where you can see where the chord changes are, and put brackets for which chords belong to which scale, which of those 3 major scales. When you have that laid out in front of you, you also want to have a page laid out in front of you that has your 3 or 4 scale shapes that you're going to use. I'd say the one shape for the B, the one shape for the E flat, or the G, sorry, and then the 2 shapes for E flat. That would be one way of doing it. You could do it with 2 shapes for any one of the 3 scales, though. Anyway, have those all next to each other positionally in just fret boxes, right? So you've got your fret boxes with those positions that are all next to each other. And at first you're just going to want to practice soloing over the progression just using, say, the top 2 strings. So whoops, I was supposed to say in G there, sorry. Whoops. I jumped down to the 3rd string. I was trying to keep it all on 2 strings for you. But yeah, if you can restrict yourself to 2 strings, you're going to see how to smoothly lead in from one scale to the next very easily. And that's the trick, is learning how to connect these the notes of one scale to the other, either by staying on that note because it's common to both keys, and you're going to be able to clearly see that when you're just looking at 2 notes per string, or instead of staying on a common tone, just moving by a half step to a contrasting tone in the new key. Either way is a really good approach. So then, branch out to 3 strings. Well, first go in 2 string sets. Write down the strings until you've worked with every 2 string set with those scale positions. And play over the recording. As soon as you have that, then 3 strings at a time with each set of 3, 4 strings at a time, 5, 6, and then keep picking up the pace until you're playing right up to speed. And whoop.